Hey, Hermos.
Ellen.
Audio. I'd like to go. Look at that, City of Campbell. Can you believe I'm still working for him? The meeting will begin shortly. All right. Cool. There we go. Hello?
Hey, Brett. I don't think we.
Oh,
Hello.
yeah. There you are. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Helen, how are you?
Good. Hi, Brett. How are you?
Doing well. Can you see me?
Good. Good. Not yet.
Good.
Keep it that way, right?
Exactly. All right.
Can you guys hear me?
Levi, how are you?
We can.
How did I end up with my?
I'm doing well, Brett.
You're a
Been a
little
long
low,
time.
Hormos. I can
I
just
am.
barely hear you. Yeah.
Daniel, you're there too, I think.
Let's see.
Okay.
Where's my volume setting?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Brett. Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Daniel, good to see you.
Hi, Daniel.
Oh, hi, Stuart.
Buddy, hey, how you doing? How's the
Hi.
Cape Crusader?
Hello. Oh, Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. Long time no see.
I was just thinking about that. I know it has been a while. How are you?
Hi, Jennifer.
I drive by or ride by your building with my bike often. Well, usually like on a Friday afternoon, and I look to see if I see someone that I know coming out of that building. It hasn't happened yet, but
I'll try to be out there for.
All
I'm
right.
usually inside working. But good to see you guys.
Good to see you.
Right. So is the meeting over yet, Daniel? Is this it? We've approved and we're ready to move on?
Just like that.
I thought so, just like it used to be.
Yeah, well, those old days are long in the past now, I'm afraid.
I know.
Just waiting on Adam. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
It looks, yeah, it's not on yet.
He's got a message. Can you promote me to a panelist? So I don't think he's getting.
That's funny. He is a,
I think he's having problems getting in.
I'm not sure why. Can you guys see me?
No.
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 I don't know why it's not letting me.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hopefully I will not look like I am transmitting from the inside of a potato, as I am trying to use a different Zoom client, but it doesn't let me set my participant ID when I join, hence the please promote me bit. Excuse me.
What was that?
That was a big cat.
That is a big cat.
Yeah, he wants to be on the table.
Holy mackerel! What a cool cat that is.
This is Abed. Yes, yeah. He's. If you see someone blurring in front of the screen, that's him. Also, if you see the angle of the camera change, it's because he is bumping his little cat face on my laptop.
It was funny, the meeting that we had yesterday, everybody goes, "Hey, Brett, look over your left shoulder." And I look up and there's a giant Siamese cat. He's on a wall that's 8 feet in the air looking at the whole meeting, watching me. I didn't see it, but everybody else saw it. Pretty funny. It was my aunt's cat.
Aww.
Okay, are we all set? Is everybody here? As far as we
Looks
know.
like it.
No, we
Yeah,
just got the
we're
one
good.
item, right?
I think we're waiting for the ARC board, right? Or no?
Hmm?
How does that work?
I'm sorry, Brett.
The folks from the Architectural Review Board?
Well, you got him right here. You have
That's right.
Stuart and Adam.
That's good
Oh.
enough.
Where, yeah, the
Okay, cool.
Site and Architectural Review Committee is just two people from the Planning Commission.
That's
Important.
the dynamic duo. So
Wait,
this is as good as it gets.
yeah, no, this is great, actually. That's very cool.
Well, welcome everybody to the SARC. I'm Stuart and Adam, so we're fellow commissioners on the Planning Commission. As you probably know, the SARC is a subcommittee of the regular Planning Commission, which meets every couple of weeks, as does the SARC usually. So we don't have any decision-making powers. We basically make recommendations on architectural stuff, I guess, in relation to the plan. So it's a type of, informal pre-session before the Planning Commission meeting. But I'm sure you guys have done these before. So Daniel, if you're ready, do you want to kick off?
Let me share my screen here. All right. So we have an application for a conditional use permit modification with site architectural review to allow construction of a new 8,000 square foot government facility for the Santa Clara County Library District at 1344 Dell Avenue, and it's a continuation of a shared parking arrangement with their primary facility located next door at 1377 Dell Avenue. So the primary project site is about a 50,000 square foot flag lot located off Dell Avenue, located up against the percolation ponds. This is south of Hacienda, located, adjacent to industrial properties on all sides. This had been the former location of the Post 99 meeting hall, which was demolished a couple of years ago after the library district purchased the property. Currently, the property is used as extra parking for library staff. In 2012, when the Planning Commission approved a conditional use permit for the library district to take occupancy of the adjacent building, that approval also allowed for shared use of this parking lot because their primary facility was underparked, but this site, even with the old Post 99 building, was actually overparked. So there was the ability for a shared parking arrangement to be implemented. Here we have the proposed site plan. The secondary site is shown somewhat hashed out. It is technically within the scope of the application because of the shared parking arrangement, but the primary activity that's taking place is at 1344 Dell Avenue. So you have, of course, again, this long existing panhandle that provides access to the site. This panhandle area is actually encumbered by an easement that serves the adjacent property. You actually see some of these parking stalls here along this edge. So this easement is actually used for these vehicles to get in and out. And because of that, as noted in the staff report, there was really no opportunity for us to provide any landscaping or pedestrian connection along this existing driveway access. So which is what you see here. This is just kind of the long pedestrian access that leads towards the street through the adjacent property. Again, why this conditional use permit approval would encapsulate both sites. In terms of the proposed building, a closer view here, it's a 8,000 square foot office building located up facing the percolation ponds. It does have a tapered setback because the property line does taper and the building is straight up and down. As noted in the staff report, the Planning Commission can actually allow a reduction in the required setback all the way down to 0. And so the applicants are proposing to encroach into that required setback. The area of encroachment is limited to the outdoor deck for the building. The project is heavily parked, well in excess of what is required for the building. The building would only require 36 parking spaces. The site would include 86. The majority of that parking is intended to be shared with the adjacent property, and that would be codified with a covenant running with both properties. Let's see. One additional note, probably you see it over here. The plans do indicate a desire to share the existing trash enclosure that's located on the adjacent site. But as noted in the staff report, the city does require that every use have its own trash enclosure. And so technically this is two properties. The director did feel that it would be most appropriate for the site to actually include its own trash enclosure as compared to sharing it with the adjacent property. But the applicants always do have a choice of merging the two properties so they would become one legal property, so that there will be no issue with sharing the enclosure since both buildings would be on the same site. Alternatively, because the property is so heavily parked, there is actually still a surplus of parking, even taking into account both buildings. So there is space to actually provide that trash enclosure on site. In terms of architectural design, we're seeing a very modern design, contemporary features, a lot of atypical cladding materials, metal meshing, aluminum metal paneling, and corton plating, and extensive glazing that faces the percolation ponds. The site's very interesting simply because the perspective of the building really is not from the street because it's so deeply in there. The perspective really is going to be seen here at the top left from the percolation ponds and the Los Gatos Creek Trail across the pond. The site has several trees, three which are considered protected. Application request removal of 2 of those trees due to the proximity of the building. And the application also does propose relocating an existing queen palm tree from one side of the building from one side of the site to another. Also, there is a request for a reduction in perimeter landscaping. You see up here, normally the code requires 5 feet of landscape all the way around, but due to the need to provide a walkway to the adjacent property and adequate emergency vehicle access, the application does request a reduction in landscaping along those edges. However, in total, the site would still exceed the 10% minimum landscaping requirement, not taking into account the access way, simply because that panhandle, as I noted, cannot be landscaped. So staff felt it was most appropriate to not include it within the 10% calculation. Lastly, the application also does include a request for utility variance. Technically, this application requires that these existing utility poles and overhead utility lines be replaced with new underground service. That would effectively have to go from this pole to this pole, and then probably have a downstream ramification on the other direction. Because the frontage is so limited, simply the one driveway, the applicants are requesting a variance to simply leave the existing utilities as they are today. Otherwise, that type of improvement could be seen as an encumbrance on the overall project. That is it for my presentation. If Stark has any questions, and then I believe the applicants also would like to speak.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Great presentation. What was the reason for setback being so close to the perimeter? Why couldn't it be moved back a couple more feet so it's not an issue?
It was actually more than a couple of feet. If I don't know, then if you can go back to that site plan,
Sure.
That triangular shape essentially is the area that we are in encroachment. So moving that out of the encroachment would have essentially encroached on the parking on the other side, and due to the very limited width that we have there, it would have we just didn't have the room to push the building. We couldn't reduce the square footage. We already reduced it from the initial intent of 13,000 square feet exactly for these reasons, that we couldn't park it, that we reduced it to 8,000. And within that, you still have that, the triangular, the pink area is the encroachment area. Although it is, like Daniel said, it is on a deck essentially. So it's not, the building is not encroaching into it, but it's a deck that is covered from the top. So that's the extent of the encroachment. That's the reason. We just didn't have the room.
Correct, and you can see that it's quite tight too. I mean, you have the 2 drive aisles, and these parking stalls actually overhang into the landscaping areas. So the challenge here, I mean, in order to comply with the setback requirement, the project effectively would have to lose the deck entirely. So you would lose that outdoor amenity for the employees.
And just to add on to that, the deck would be one thing, but the roof that's covering the deck is actually shading all that glass. So, and based on the orientation, it would just it'd be essentially too much sun in the building. They'd have to pay to air condition it, for forever. So it's a sustainability measure as well.
So the reason for the setback being what it is in the plan is purely for the parking. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So about the parking, Daniel, you mentioned that the site is overparked. This building would need 36 spaces. They have 86, but this is due to the parking sharing arrangement. Like with that with the parking sharing arrangement included, I guess I would ask, do we know how the current state of this site is that this site is unused and it's just an overflow parking lot for the adjacent parcel, right?
Correct.
Do we know how much parking is actually used from that?
I think the applicants can better speak to the operation.
What we were given and with the documentation we were able to get our hands on, the arrangement was for 50 parking spaces. So basically we are 36 plus 50, that makes 86.
Okay, so you've been requested to put in 86. I was wondering, like, my thought process here is that there tends to be a lot of fear of underparking to the extent that sometimes we overpark. But
Right.
if that's what they wanted, that's what they wanted.
But before we move off that point, if I can just clarify a little bit. So the parking is it's an interesting question because the 2012 approval did indicate 50 parking stalls were going to be required from this property to serve the adjacent property. But the staff report actually, the math only indicates a need for 43, and it's unclear why 50 was chosen as a number that actually needed to be provided when 43 was only technically required. So what we're seeing here is actually incidentally overparked still, even taking into account the shared arrangement by 7 parking stalls. So again, if that's 7 parking stalls that could theoretically be converted to a trash enclosure, or in some areas maybe a little additional landscaping. So there is a little wiggle room to play with if that's something the SARC wants to look into further.
Is the applicant aware of that?
They are.
Okay.
Brad is anyway.
Yes, we are aware of that, and the reason that we started off with 50 spots is because that's the documentation, or that's a letter that we had back in 2011 when we acquired the property, that we needed to provide 50 spots to 1344 to make that happen. And then now that it comes to play and everybody's looked at all the documentation, it really only means 47, which is fine. So we have 7 spots to spare, but our hope is not to have a trash enclosure only because of the aesthetics to it. It's not viewed from the street, but we'd like to keep that building. It's a gorgeous building, and technically the 2 properties are really one, because you can't sell one without the other because of the parking restrictions. So that's kind of like what we were anticipating, and we submitted for. Also, we're not actually adding staff. We're just moving staff from the existing building to that building, and won't really be generating more trash. So if that becomes the conclusion of this, we have a couple of options we'd like to share, but we're hoping that we can proceed with the 1 trash enclosure for both properties, although they're technically, like I said, just 1 property because of the parking. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think I hear what you're saying. Is it possible to merge the parcels, since you own both and want to sort of administer them as 1 block of land?
It is very possible to do that. It's a fairly straightforward process.
So, I've got a bunch of questions and comments on there, but before I and Adam probably ask them, does the applicant want to present anything or talk to the proposal and plans first?
Daniel did a great job of explaining everything. It's a small building. I mean, we can go a little bit into it if you like to hear more on, the palette for the materials and the way that the building was planned in concept based on the, private and public part of starting from the street coming, transitioning to the park. We can explain more of that if you like to hear, but if what Daniel presented suffice, I don't think we have more to add to that.
Okay, no, I think the report was good. It was just if you really wanted to say something, which Daniel
Appreciate
explained.
it. Thank you.
Adam, are you okay with that?
Well, actually, I did have, I guess, a question about the. Excuse me. No, do not eat that. So. I noticed that the side facing the creek trail is sort of this big open glass thing, which looks really, really cool. How much light does that put out at night?
Are you looking for actual lumens, or because?
Well, I mean, just in terms of like.
No, it's been right. It's been, we definitely, and there were comments actually in the planning review as well as are just considerations for not intruding or with polluting light basically outside of the building. So first of all, the lighting, because of the canopy, and all the light comes from the inside, and then the lights that are on the exterior deck are on the back of the columns that are supporting the roof above, and they're shining up towards the roof of the canopy of the building essentially. And everything is on a timer, so after a certain time of the night, it will turn off basically. So in order to not to have the pollution, and this was a comment that was also made, was addressed by the survey, the bird survey assessment that we did, that they pointed that out, and they made recommendations which we followed, and the recommendation was not to have this was in relation to birds obviously, but in any case, these have been considered, and that's the extent of.
Okay, mainly I just wanted to make sure that somebody had thought about it, and it sounds like you really have. So, yeah, that answers my question. I assume there's going to be some kind of condition of approval involving, like, you can't shine the lights at 3 a.m. Although, I don't know, it's shining towards a highway, which the lights on the highway don't turn off at 3 a.m.
Yeah, if I could add to that, so the plans do include a site photometric plan, which is fairly standard, and that does show that at the edge of the property we have lighting around 2-foot candles, and we also did have the applicants procure a bird study. We just want to double check that the project wouldn't have any potential impacts to migratory birds, and that study did also analyze lighting and as it relates to bird migration, and provide some recommendations which will be just formalized as conditions of approval moving forward.
Thank you. Yeah, so some thoughts and comments from me. I think it's an outstanding design. I think it looks beautiful. One of the best designs I've seen since being here in Campbell. I think it really captures, is open, inviting, a type of, is modern, but also captures the type of the area and the surrounding land. So I think it's a really outstanding design. To that, I noticed on the plan it had fencing between the trail and the actual building. Is that actually necessary? Because I saw the picture and it was like beautiful building, some black fencing, and I thought it's so inviting without public being a nuisance, or which may be an issue, right? But I would want people to come and look at the place, and it's a public building, it's a library. I don't know whether there's an opportunity to advertise things that are going on in the library. And I know the library services do a lot of stuff. And I know it's an administrative building rather than a library. But a general question is, do we need that fencing? Is there something which could make it a bit more inviting to get people, rather than having a separate black barrier between it? That was going to be one of my questions for that. As a comment. So
the reason the fence is there is because the county, or the Santa Clara County, always
Water
has
district.
had the water district, excuse me, has always had a 6-foot fence there. I mean, we'd like to reduce it down to 5 feet, but it's not clear that we can do that. And we're just not sure if we want to have folks being able to just hop over that fence from the trail and be into that property. And so that's the way it is planned for now. But I mean, obviously it would be great not to have it at all, but I don't think that would just be conducive to the whole situation, unfortunately.
We have converted it. It's not going to be a chain link fence. So we have done something that is more architectural in alignment with the language of the design of the building. Although we don't like the fence either, but I don't think anybody does. But for practical reasons, I think it's been there, and it's not our decision to keep it or not. We just enhanced it to aesthetically be better than what's there right now.
Yeah, we've at least tried to minimize the appearance of it. It's essentially a black wire fence, which when you look through those, I wouldn't say they disappear, but they are very minimal. It's, you don't see a lot. And certainly from the pond side, looking back at the building, it will at least be as minimized as it can be and still be a 6-foot high fence. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah.
Really.
Agreed.
I guess that's even more to you guys, right?
Agreed.
So
yeah, please.
So speaking of accessibility from the trail, it's close to one of our major bike trails, and I noticed there's only 3 bike parking spots there. So I guess this is sort of a combination of questions that, like, I'm somewhat curious as to how much of the parking is actually used. Like, I realize that we are requiring a lot of parking, but I'm wondering how much of it is actually used. Because you mentioned that you had to chop off about 1/3 of the building in order to fit more parking, and it would seem a little perverse to make you do that if it's not actually being used.
Yeah, I was going to pick up on that same point because I saw 3 bike parking spaces. We're overparked by 7 car parking spaces. We're right next to the trail. We're pretty close to VTA. Bikes would really make a good option there, right? So building that, what Adam I think is thinking about, and sorry Adam if I'm putting words in your mouth here, I would really like, if I was going to put a comment back to the Planning Commission, I don't think 3 bike spaces is adequate at all. I'd like to see at least 10. Access from the front, because per the plan, it's a long tortuous trail from the front, or from the road access to the back. And one of the comments there, is there room to put bike marking on there next to the path? And could there be access from the trail, right, for your employees, that if they're biking down the trail, can they go, because you can go straight from the trail to the front of the building? Is there a gate that could be put in there that they can get bike access that way? I'm sorry, Adam, I jumped in on your
that's certainly congruent with my thoughts on the matter. I don't know if Stuart and I are the most pro biking people on the Planning Commission. I don't know how representative this is, but I realize you're putting in the amount of parking you've been requested to put in. I'm just curious as to how necessary it is, and what else we could do with the space.
I think there's 7 spaces. I think my understanding was they got parking for 50, but actually the requirement is for 43. So we have 7 parking spaces. So it's not as though, they could be partly converted over to biking spaces, a little bit of, landscaping, some seats for the employees, right? Something.
Certainly.
You could do quite a nice little area in 7 car parking spaces.
Yeah, above and beyond the reduction in the requirements. I was curious as to like what the actual use of the 43 required parking spaces is. But that said, this is the site and architectural review. So I should at least mention, I really do like the look of it. It looks modern, but not in a boring way. I think it's a really interesting design. I think it would look really, really cool from the trail. It provides a lot of visual interest, and I would be happy to work in a building that looked like that. I think a lot of modern architecture kind of looks like it hates you, and this one does not, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes, it's awesome. It is a beautiful building. Currently, we have a gate from 1370 that allows the staff to utilize the trail, which they do daily, quite often. Not by bikes, but there's a lot of walking going on. There's spots currently there. I think there's, I don't know how many technically, but I think there's enough spots for like 6 bikes currently at 1370 Dell. And I'm not sure if this new site 1344 would allow us the accessibility to just come from the back gate onto the to the trail. And by the way, the trail ends right there to the north side of the building. There's a fence there that doesn't allow any pedestrians to travel further north. So that's kind of a dead end. Well, that being said, if it's going to be one property, then the accessibility to the trails is still going to be accessible from both buildings just by walking basically from, I don't know, it's like 30, 40 feet maybe between the two buildings. So that's always, that was our thought too. We want to make sure it's a very comfortable place for the employees. And so that's hence the deck, and then the bike parking, I don't even know if there's any bike parking at all at 1344, but there is currently at 1370, if that helps.
And if I can just add in terms of trail access, so the Water District is very, very particular about new points of connection to the trail. If my understanding is that they will not allow private connections, that basically if this project were to incorporate a gate that provided access to the trail, that gate would need to be open to the general public. And generally, that's not something acceptable to property owners for the liability reasons.
That is correct. That would be our feeling as well.
Yeah, we ran into this exact same issue with Mid-Penn in their new facility in Christchurch, where they back up to the percolation ponds, and they wanted to have a gate to access the park back there. And in the end, the Water District would not allow it.
So that means basically that that accessibility by bike is considerably more difficult than it otherwise would be.
So as Brett indicated, I mean, if they do have a connection point on the adjacent property, that certainly can be leveraged here as well.
And that particular access is not accessible to the public. It's only accessible to the employees of the Santa Clara County Library building.
And where does that, I'm sorry, I'm a bit confused on that accessibility point. Is it, you still have to go from the road through the existing building to get there?
The access is just for employees only. It is not accessible to the public. Now, if the public was to walk from the street to the back during business hours, they could do so. But we don't allow that after hours. We don't want folks coming from the front into the back for a bunch of reasons, but they cannot access the gate from the trail into the parking lot for several reasons. It's right to the loading dock, and it just creates some issues that we just didn't want to go that way.
So what you're saying is there's no trail access to the existing building at the moment. It's all through.
Not to the public, no.
Or yeah, what about just employees?
It's just for employees, right?
Okay.
Yes.
So there is a way to go from the trail to both the existing building and to the new building.
Correct.
Via the trail. Okay, so there is access.
Yes, there is access, and and the employees love it. They use it daily, and it's a big part of it.
Okay,
It's a real nice spot.
So about
I was confused.
I'm sorry.
Oh, so like, I'm glad to hear employees use the trail, but is it only about 6 of them? Because you said there's very little bike parking available at the other part of the branch.
There's 6 bicycle parking spaces, but there's many employees, and frankly, I don't know any of them that bike. They walk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's excellent that you're in a location where people can walk to work.
Yeah, and I mean, like in the last, I don't know, 4 years, I think I've seen like 2 bikes parked in the parking in the bike racks. Most of the folks just walk.
Well, I don't know if I'm far too late in the process to nudge on this, but if it's a situation where, and Stuart, please let me know if I'm out of line here, but if it's a situation where a lot of employees walk, I'm concerned that we're over parking the place, that our standards over parking because they don't take into account how many people walk to work. But then again, I don't have anything quantitative here. Just bringing one to surface.
You'll be talking about, I think, that later in the planning commission director's report part. But I think if they meet the parking requirements of 43, and Daniel can correct me if I'm wrong here, that would meet the parking requirements.
Correct. I mean,
yeah, I would, when we come to the planning commission side, where I'm thinking I would be asking for the applicant to reconsider those 7 parking spaces as an open area, landscaping, additional bike racks, because just an observation, sometimes you don't get people biking because it's very limited or poor bike parking. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing. And I'm hoping that, time people will be encouraged to electric bike more. And having a good bike rack does make a difference. There's some falling examples out there. So that would be my recommendation, what I'll be thinking about on the planning commission side of it. So I have some feedback on it. The other part on the trash and utility, I'm actually okay with the having a single trash facility that's shared between the two buildings. And the utility, I get it, right? It's a fairly narrow access. It doesn't really make that much sense to do it for that entrance.
I agree with Stuart about the utility. I do not have strong feelings about the trash enclosure issue, although I think conceptually it makes more sense to merge the parcels into one larger one. It seems like that's what our rules are sort of encouraging the applicant to do here.
do you agree with that, Stuart?
Yeah, I think that would make sense unless there was a good reason not to.
All right.
Daniel, does merging the parcels create some kind of issue where you can only have one major structure per parcel or something like that?
No, we would need to double check the floor area ratio, but given the quantity of parking on the site, I don't think they're going to be anywhere near the maximum, but I'll double check.
Hey, can I just ask a question? And Brett, forgive me if I'm out of line here, but is there any hesitancy from the library to have less parking in the annex lot?
Well, it's sometimes when we have on-site meetings,
Yeah.
You never know exactly how many people are going to attend. So I would think that it would be in our best interest to have a few extra spots, just for that fact, because quite frankly, the existing 1370, when we have on-site meetings, which we haven't had in a long time, but it fills up and we use the overflow next door. So it's nice to have a buffer always. I think it does. It's not like we have 20 spots a day that are vacant. It's you know, between the employees, and then if we have a county meeting that visits the site, it's nice to have those. It is. But we'll do whatever we need to do, obviously.
I guess you've got the option of public transport, VTA, ride sharing, right?
Yeah, you do. It's, you know how that works. So it's difficult when folks are from meetings from different locations. Yeah, it's always great to have that.
The only thing I'm thinking, Brett, you know, right in the front at the entry, remember how we created that parking that didn't look like parking? Do you remember that, Jennifer?
Yes, yes.
If we're going to get rid of parking, like we get rid of 4 parking spaces, those might be a good 4 to eliminate, right? And just make that part of the entry plaza, so no one ever could park right in front of the front door, basically. And that might be an opportunity to add some more very easily add a few more bike racks there as well. And then they'd be right there at the front entry.
Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm totally into biking. It's just that the facility isn't conducive to folks coming there to bike. It's just, you know, like I said, I've only seen 2 bikes there and 6 spots in 4 years. So if we were going to do something like that, I'd rather see it go to landscape.
Yeah, it's a great place for a palm tree.
Yeah, it's a great place, because I just really honestly don't think the biking, even though it's something that we want to promote, we do promote, I think it would be a waste of spaces, and I think landscaping may be a better choice if that's which way we wanted to go.
Well, the city does love trees.
We do, and that's one of the reasons we're saving that palm tree, because that is important.
All right. If don't recall, see my notes. Did the SARC have a particular preference or opinion on the setback reduction at the back?
It makes sense to me. I don't have a strongly negative feeling. I don't have a strong feeling about it. It seems like the parking requirements and the shape of the building and the shape of the lot lead to some trade-offs having to be made, and that's a reasonable one. It's not encroaching on, you know, anybody's house or anything.
Yeah, so there's 2 trees to be removed on the top corner, I believe. 2 protected trees, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, one of them is a pine tree, and it's not one of the best trees you've seen. It's covered in asphalt, and on the other side of the neighbor, it's pretty intrusive as far as the roots trying to come up over there. So I'm not sure how they're going to deal with that in the future. But it was the least of the trees that we had to get rid of. The palm tree was important to us just because it's been there so long, and it is a real nice, healthy tree. So the other trees are not as good a candidate to save, unfortunately.
So do they have to be removed because of the siting and the construction of the building, or is this you just don't want them now?
Hormos, I will refer
have
to you.
to look at it. We've worked very hard to preserve as much as we could. And I don't know exactly where these existing trees fall, whether the building would encroach on them regardless, or is it the deck? If we go back to the site plan, we can look at it together and see if it does. But like Brett said, we evaluated the trees, Stuart, and those are not, they're not exactly the preservable type of tree that you work really hard to keep, because it's better to bring another tree in, and instead of saving that one. I'm not one who likes to get rid of trees by any means, but my point is that we've evaluated the site pretty carefully as far as what we're removing and what we're preserving.
Well, I guess there's two things. One is they have to be removed because of the construction and the siting of the building, and the other one is because you don't think they're good candidates for keeping. If it's the latter,
I
I
think it's sort of like a
Yeah, so we see
hybrid.
these trees over here at the corner.
See, that's not right. The building is not even encroaching on them.
I think one of these is near a sanitation line that's proposed.
Right.
But I agree, neither tree seem particularly of a quality or worth keeping. But I mean, I guess if that's something the SARC would like the applicant to look further into, we could explore that question a little further.
Yeah, it'd be good to get a picture of them or a little bit more detail, because they may be. It looks like it doesn't interfere with the construction on there, but they may be just not very good trees. I don't know. It'd be nice to understand that better. Where I'm going with this is we could have them replaced rather than just being removed.
I mean, there will be new trees planted on the property within the center median for the parking lot. I think I have a photo here of the trees. Give me a moment. I think, Brad, if you can confirm, I think these are the trees. This is the Afghan pine right here, and I believe this is the juniper over here.
That's correct. The pine tree is right on the fence, and I hate to get rid of trees too. It's just not a good tree to have in the area. It's got some issues, like I said, with the roots already encroaching on the neighbor's property, and I'm not sure what that means to them. And the juniper it's just, yeah. I mean, we could add trees that are a lot nicer than that, and don't create problems for us, because those two trees will create problems with any type of hardscape we put next to them. And it's already evident at this time if you look at the trees and what they're doing to the asphalt.
Yeah, I don't think on the Campbell type of guidelines on protected trees, unless it's causing damage to a building, I don't think it really qualifies. If we were just looking at a tree removal permit, I think it actually has to be doing some damage to a building as opposed to a path, which it sounds like it's doing in this case.
And that's one of the reasons we went the extra mile to save the palm tree, is because it is in the way, but it's a great specimen of a palm tree. It's been there for probably, I don't know, 40 years, and it's just, Campbell has kind of a soft spot for palm trees. We've moved a few of them in the past, and it seems like the right thing to do.
And there was, in terms of electric vehicle parking, there's 2 charging points or 1 charging point?
2.
I believe
There's 2.
we followed the Calgary requirements, the minimum, and it's infrastructure as Calgary requires. The actual units are not planned to be installed, but the conduits would be there for the chargers to be added in time, as needed, required, desired.
Okay, Adam, any more questions, comments from your side? Just being aware of time, we've got the 7:30 coming up in a minute.
No, I think I've I've covered everything I want to. I'd like to thank you folks for bringing a really a gorgeous design here, and I look forward to seeing you at the Planning Commission.
And before we wrap up, we do have two speakers who would like to say a little something if the chair would entertain that.
Yes, please. Sorry, I apologise from down the bottom. Missing those. Yes, definitely.
Good evening, Chair and subcommittee
Hi.
members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Going too well.
My name is Shani Kleinhaus. I'm the environmental advocate for Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society. I think my colleagues have left by now because it wasn't clear that we will have the opportunity to speak in this meeting. I wanted to talk about the Orca ponds, or the Orca percolation ponds. These are one of the most important habitats for resident and migratory birds in Santa Clara County. Of 100 hotspots in our county, it is ranked 14th with 203 species of birds, more than Coyote Valley, more than Vasona, more than Ulistock, more than a lot of the other areas that have a lot of bird species that visit them, both migratory and resident. So this is really important habitat for birds and an important location also for many bird watchers that want to see all these species. So what does that mean? We know that bird populations are experiencing decline throughout North America. The development in critical habitats and locations, such as this one, especially when water features are nearby, is really, really critical. And we know that bird collision with glazed surfaces and glass is a critical issue in bird conservation. The estimates for bird collisions in North America are somewhere between 200 million and 1 billion birds every year. And that's probably partially, or some of the decline in populations is attributed to this. The rendering does show a beautiful project, but it would be a hazard to birds anywhere, not only where it is located. And so in this location, the glazing near the, towards the Orca ponds will require potentially very, very robust mitigation, more than just putting a few dots on it or putting some kind of overhang or something like that. This is a critical location. You will need robust, strong, and potentially expensive mitigation. I also wanted to talk about light because you discussed it before, and I think it's really critical. What we're finding out is lighting interferes with biological function in all living things, birds included, people are included, plants included. And so the lighting, if I remember what the planner said, was the lighting would be what we usually do to deal with dark sky or with the lighting instructions. Today, just today, the International Dark Sky Association released new guidelines on how to do lighting outdoors. And those guidelines are a lot stronger than they used to be before. They're mostly talking about the heat or the correlated heat temperature of lights, looking if before they used to recommend 3,000 Kelvin, now they're talking about 2,200 Kelvin in sensitive areas like this one. The same was recommended by the UN in a very large project that was just completed at the end of last year. So there's a lot of evolving knowledge about lighting, a lot of evolving knowledge about bird collision. And I haven't seen your report on bird collision, but I would love to see it because I don't know. Some of the consultants around here are very good. None of them know everything that we know now about locations like this, but some of them are good and some of them are not. And I don't know who wrote yours, and I would like to see it. The last thing I want to talk about is the setbacks and plantings and trees. One of the most important things to migratory birds is to have some vegetation near water sources. Now you have an opportunity here to put a deck for people, but you also have a great opportunity to create habitat for birds and plant a few trees back there between Orca ponds and the building, and plant shrubs and plant native vegetation. And I'm not thoroughly attached to the trees that are there now, but they provide habitat. And you can keep those or replace them, but whichever you do needs to create real habitat in the back there. And 10 feet is not enough for that. You need 25 feet like you do when you build next to a creek with the water district requirements. So I would say at least in the back, and I don't know what you want to do in front, but as is, you'll need to make room for that. So if you can remove some parking, that's wonderful. But if you can't, then you still need to make room for that, because that is your opportunity to create habitat and to improve the situation for birds instead of making it worse. And also take a look at the lighting issues and the bird safety for sure. That much glazing right next to Orca ponds is just really, really hazardous for them. So I hope to see the report on birding. I wanted the things I just said to be on the record. Some of my colleagues were going to talk about some more specific issues, but they didn't know if they're going to get to talk and they left. But if you want to talk about it more, I'm happy to discuss these issues with you and with the Planning Commission and Council or whoever needs to gain some understanding of not only how people would be enjoying this building, but also how the birds may at least not be killed on it, but also potentially enjoy it. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much for sticking with it and giving us feedback. That's great. Daniel, I've got a question on access to the bird report for Shani. I guess I assume it's public record. She can get it from.
Yeah, she can certainly reach out to me, and it will also be included as part of the Planning Commission staff report, since it supports the environmental determination.
Okay, thank you. Just being aware of time, only got a couple of minutes left. So, Shani, to your point, and I believe the hearing at the Planning Commission meeting is in 2 weeks. So if you wanted to, and your colleagues wanted to raise this again, I'd suggest that would be a good opportunity to do that, and it should be given. You should be able to see the report by that time as well. Daniel, was there? I saw two questions being raised, or two hands being raised. Was that?
Yeah,
both?
see one other attendee, Galaxy S10. Okay, guess not.
Probably dropped.
Okay.
Okay.
So Shani, yeah, feel free to give our office a call, and I can provide you a copy of that report.
I just saw she asked if Seeker had been completed.
Let me see quick. Yeah, so this project is below 10,000 square feet, so it is being processed as categorically exempt under CEQA, but that is a staff recommendation. Ultimately, if the Planning Commission feels that a more exhaustive environmental review is warranted, the commission may require that. But based on the avian report that was procured by the applicant, at this point, we feel that a categorical exemption is appropriate, but that is it is a judgment call.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that and the time, we have to jump onto the Planning Commission.
Stuart, can you let people know that I'm probably going to be joining the same way? I will be there. You just have to notice that I'm a participant and promote me. Otherwise, it looks like I am, again, calling through a potato.
Okay.
All right.
Right.
Thank
you very much for the proposal. Looks great building. Love you guys to think about some of the comments on there for the meeting. And thanks, Daniel.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.